Okay, everybody. So here all week on the main page of my website, so just on mrwalks.wordpress.com, okay? If you scroll down to period 6, Computer Science 20S, here has always been the link to the Teams meeting. Every day this week, I've been recording our class over Teams and posting the recording. And I'll be recording today, posting today's recording as well. But also now as well, I've added this note here, okay? So the code from all of this week's, the code from all of this week's extras projects is now posted here. Direct links to the code. So for example, yesterday, the mini Pac-Man game had a lot of code. So if you just click on this, especially those really complex if statements, and just scroll down, you can see the code that we've been putting in. And even these complex if statements are here. So you can literally copy and paste them into an example. Now, if you've been unable to do the examples at home this week, this is also an option available to you when you get back on Monday. I do want to talk for 1 second about the final project. I'm going to talk more about it in detail next week, obviously. But I sent an email to a student from the InformNet class today, and I thought some of what I wrote in that could be applied to you guys as well. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of this. 1 sec. Okay. So the student asked me about the final project. What kind of thing could I do? So what I said was, it depends on your comfort level, right? Like what kind of final project you do depends on what you're comfortable with, because what the final project will do is it'll have you use the concepts you've learned, okay? You must balance this with what motivates you, right? So I use an example here. It says, I might want to make a video game rather than a program to help my parents do their taxes, because making a video game would be fun for me and it would motivate me every day I come to class for the next 3 weeks to work on my final project because it's a cool video game. However, I might not be comfortable with the concepts that I'd need to use to make a video game. This is similar to if you were in power mechanics, you might want to rebuild an engine, but if you haven't been paying attention on how to rebuild an engine, you're not going to be able to do it, right? So I may not be comfortable with all the concepts of making a big video game. So you have to balance what you want to do with what you can do in a lot of ways. So that's part of the mark, is finding a way to navigate that and come up with a final project. Now, what I also said was, you're going to think about the concepts of the course. These are the concepts of the course, right? So these 9 concepts were taught over these 17 weeks of this class. Doing a design, changing properties like .visible equals true, .text equals hello, creating variables, integers, doubles, strings, etc. Using the variables, right? So sometimes that means converting it to a number, or text to a number, making a formula, okay? Then constants and global variables. The basic if statement, the more complex if statements like else if statements and nested if statements, the while loop and the for loop. Those are the main programming concepts of this course. That's what I expect to see in your final project, okay? However, I also understand that when you do a final project, as it says here, you may not be able to get all those ideas in there, right? Like you may, for example, it's difficult for students to find a place to put a loop into their code, okay? And that's why I've given a lot of sort of leeway on how you can get graded on that final project, okay? But what I suggested to this student I wrote the email to was, maybe think of it in 3 levels. So when you go to do a final project and start it next week, you will only do a level 1 project if you're only basically comfortable with designing and maybe making variables. You could build a whole project just from those concepts, like barely maybe even writing an if statement into your project. Now, I'm not saying it's going to get 100%, but you can get a project out of that. So what kind of projects could you get if you were just simple logic, basic variables, maybe to keep score, something like that. Then you can see there's some ideas like me, a little math tester, a car chooser. So, lots of pictures, lots of picking, taking one of the assignments and expanding on it, a personality test, like a BuzzFeed quiz, a guessing game, interactive book. That's the kind of stuff you can expect if you understood stuff up to about the variables unit in this course, and then everything after that was kind of fuzzy. Now, what about level 2? Well, level 2 is a little more complex logic. So this would mean you've understood design and variables, but also if statements, right? Like the basic if statement. So it says, including if statements, okay? So your programs will make decisions, and maybe your variables are a little more complex. So here's some of the stuff you could do if you now start incorporating if statements into your final project. Games like memory, even card games like war, tic-tac-toe, shell games, puzzles, dice games, right? RPGs even, Risk, language converters, calculators, clocks, day timers, etc. And then finally, the level 3 more advanced logic, which is literally what we're doing today with the mini Pac-Man. This is the most complex type of game, right? You have to understand your variables, you have to understand your if statements, potentially loops, and even things that go beyond those units, like timers and multiple forms, could be part of a bigger project. But what you can make expands up quite a bit. Now you can make things like Pac-Man or Frogger or Space Invaders. But these are going to be tough, right? These are the tougher projects. Anytime anything is moving, it's going to be tough. So my advice is don't take on that type of project if you haven't been paying attention in this course, if you don't understand the concepts, right? You can pass this course without having to do these complex final projects. Absolutely. Passing isn't really the issue there. It's like you're going to leave yourself out there because you don't understand the concepts. But if you do, or if you want to really push yourself to understand these concepts, then these are the types of projects that are going to be motivating to you. But, you're going to be writing maybe an if statement like this one. And that's a lot of code right there. And it's a lot of tricky code that involves variables and stuff like that. So anywho, I thought I'd put that out there for you guys, that's there. Also, if you go to our regular Computer Science 20S page, the page that you've been going to all year, and I said to you, you can find these examples here, but also, if you just scroll down the main 20S page, every week I've been writing journal entries. You knew that, I said that at the beginning of this course. So all the way back in September, saying what we did that week back in September. I wrote a journal entry today for this week. So you can see it right here. January 10th to 14th, after winter break and a few days of school closure due to the pandemic, we had a week of remote learning. Mr. Walks held virtual classes that he recorded for the week, and then I've included all the recordings, and I will include this recording there as well. And it says, note, you can find the code for all the projects for this week here. So you can also find links to the code on the main page of our website as well. Whew, okay, so there it is, everybody. There's everything. Now I want to put in that last little piece and start up my Visual Studio of the mini Pac-Man game to get the wall part working. As my Visual Studio opens up right now, does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? I didn't think so. I mean, you guys are going to be back on Monday, right? So if you have questions, build them up there. Now, I also realize next week that some of you will be still working on some old work that isn't complete yet. So one of the things we'll be going over next week is how you should be prioritizing the rest of this course. What you wouldn't want to do, one of the worst things I've ever seen students do, is just worry about all the little unit assignments and never do a final project or barely do a final project, because the final project is worth so many marks that it's worth way more marks than all those assignments. So you got to think about what's your priorities here. So some things are of higher priority. So for example, some of the lowest priority things you should just sort of maybe leave aside would be case studies. Unit case studies are worth the least amount of marks. So if you were going to not do an assignment, that would be the one I would recommend. Or maybe not complete an assignment, but you can hand it in incomplete and get partial marks for it, right? So we'll talk about how to set a priority list next week, because I think that's important. You got to remember how much time is left in this course. It isn't a million years, right? Like actually, let me show you, because I still have the calendar as well from what we created back at the end of November. All right, sorry, things are slowly launching here. Not this, something else. Okay, so you should be able to find everything I did this week, either on the home page of my site or on the 20S page itself. And Visual Studio is slowly launching here. Sorry, I should have launched it before class begun. I know that. Normally I do. I'm just, it's Friday, right? So I'm also excited to get to the weekend. It's been a long week for me too. Okay, so come on there, Visual Studio. And it's also, okay, so that's getting ready to launch. You can hand in your final project early, just like you can hand in assignments. If it's handed in early, you can get it corrected and then you can re-hand it in just the same way you can with assignments. But that's not going to work if you hand in your project at the very last minute, right? So it's a matter now of you managing the time between now and the end of the course. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down to the spot where we left off yesterday, which is checking if Pac-Man is touching the wall. That's the only piece of this example that's left to do. However, I also wanted to bring up the calendar, which I'm just moving over onto the screen right now as well. Come on. Come on. There we go. Okay, I'm going to move today over to here. That's where we are today, right? So you can see like final project time has technically already started, right? It kind of started on Tuesday. So that's because the pandemic kind of threw off our schedule a little bit, right? It threw it off for everybody. But, you know, there's still some time to work on the final project, quite a bit of time, theoretically. So we've been pretty good about staying on schedule most of this course. So nothing has really changed. Okay, there's today. He's out. Okay, so here you can see now today versus the remaining time in this course. Okay, in semester one, really, not just this course. So this is important for you to kind of visualize this. Here we are today, and then we have 2 weeks and a day, 2 weeks and 2 days left in this course to complete the final project plus anything else. This is why it's going to be important to set priorities. If you leave your final project to those last few days, it's going to not probably mark very well. And to think how much your final project is worth, that's not a good idea, right? So you might have to not do certain assignments at this point because there just won't be time left to complete them, or maybe not fully complete them. All right, so we can talk about that next week. So that's all there. So now you've seen the schedule, you knew what it was. Okay, now let's do this final piece of the Pac-Man game, checking to see if Pac-Man is touching the wall. Before we do that, I'm just going to run it once just to show you where it's at. It's not a very visually exciting mini Pac-Man, but it has the potential to be more exciting if we change the blocks and stuff into more realistic things that would fit with the game. And I talked a little bit about that yesterday. All right, so here we go. I'm moving Pac-Man through the wall. Touch the dot and it'll disappear. There it goes. And when I touch the ghost, it shuts the game down, like I lose the game. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing, the same kind of if statement with the ghost. But just before we do, we're going to create a Boolean okay? Also known as a flag variable. Booleans are known as flags because it's like it's flagging something as occurring. Boolean equals false. I'm going to assume I am not touching the wall. When I say I mean assume Pac-Man is not touching. Okay? Make that assumption. Touching wall is false. Put this up here. Oh my goodness, my computer's really slow today. Okay. Now check. So to do the if statement, I'm not going to retype it all. I'm going to literally copy and paste the if statement we did yesterday. Select it, and I'm going to replace ghost with wall. Control H. Replace the word ghost with the word wall. Okay, so it's going to be check if Pac-Man is touching the wall, not touching the ghost. Place them all. Okay. Not if so, end the game. If so, flag it. So in other words, instead of application.exit, touching wall equals true. I am touching the wall. Okay. So what I've done is I've set a Boolean variable, assume that I'm not touching, then check it, and then flag it that I am touching. Now I can use another if statement to react to a collision with the wall, but only if I'm touching. If Pac-Man touched. So if touching wall equals true, the rest of the code is going to go inside this if statement. I don't need to do anything if I'm not touching the wall. I don't need an else here. If I'm not touching the wall, I don't have to do anything. Okay? I don't need to do anything for that scenario when I'm not touching the wall. Okay. So what if I am? Well, now Pac-Man's position will change depending on which direction man was moving. Okay. What do I mean by this? Well, if Pac-Man was moving this direction, moving to the left, and now we know Pac-Man has somehow touched this wall, where should I place Pac-Man? Well, I should place Pac-Man exactly right here. Exactly touching that wall right there. Now, if Pac-Man was going this direction, I should place Pac-Man exactly touching the wall here. If Pac-Man was going this direction, I'd place Pac-Man touching the wall here. And as you can guess, if I was traveling this direction, I want to place Pac-Man exactly touching the wall at each specific spot. So I know exactly where to place Pac-Man depending on which direction I'm going. So that's what you're going to see in this if statement. If Pac-Man direction equals down, and Pac-Man's top equals the wall's top, wall one top, minus Pac-Man's height minus 1. This is a formula right here that will kind of explain it. Let me just sort of show you what I mean by this formula. Here will be, say, the wall. Oops. Here's the wall. I'm going to draw Pac-Man, assuming Pac-Man would be touching that wall. So where do I put the top of Pac-Man? Well, start off at the top of the wall. So Pac-Man starts off right here, which is wrong. But then I subtract. So in other words, I move up a certain amount. How much do I move up? Well, the height of Pac-Man. So it moves up the exact height of Pac-Man. And then I finally just subtract one more pixel. The reason I subtract one more pixel is I can't actually be touching the wall, or my if statement will assume that I still am. So I need 1 pixel distance away from the wall to get set up in there, okay? Now, I'm gonna move to an else if, okay? That's if I'm moving down. What happens if I'm moving up? What happens if Pac-Man is moving not down, but up? Move up. Well, this time, Pac-Man's top. If I'm moving up, I set myself to the wall bottom plus 1 pixel. And this is, I can illustrate this like this, right? Here's the wall, moving up. So I want to put Pac-Man exactly right there. So I say, put the top of Pac-Man right at the bottom of the wall, but then add 1 pixel. So there's a little bit of space between Pac-Man and the wall. And that's what I do right there, right? So I can do it that way, right? Top, the bottom, subtract or I add. And then I'm going to do 2 more else ifs for moving to the left. Right. And I'll give you the formulas for those. In those, if I'm moving to the left, okay, what I do is I say Pac-Man's left, wall right, or wall 1 right, pardon me. And if I'm moving to the right, you're going to see a similar formula here. It's going to be wall 1 left minus Pac-Man width minus 1, okay? So just going to leave that up there for a second so it's on the video. This is the code I've added here for reacting to the collision with the wall. And we're going to put this to the test right now. So we reuse the if statement from yesterday, and we're using this other if statement for this. Now, one thing I didn't mention is you'll notice I didn't bother with the curly brackets here. Again, that's only if you're comfortable with this kind of stuff. But let's just see what happens. I'm gonna hit the wall. Oh, look at that. I can't go through the wall. Let's try going through it from this side. Nope, it's not letting me through. How about the other side? So let me get over to the other side here. Can I get through the wall going this way? How about from underneath? Can I get it from underneath? Nope. Which means the wall is now acting as a wall. That's what it was supposed to do. And this is now the end of that code, right? The code that that would complete the mini Pac-Man example, okay? All right, so here's the deal. With that done now, I'm just gonna insert that code right into the example that's on our website there. So just give me 1 second so you can see, because I want to edit it right on our website. Editing it live for you guys right now. Go. Get rid of this. Okay. Changes. Okay, so you guys are just staring at me here. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so if you feel you need this example either today, this weekend you want to try it, or next week when you get into your final project, you now can just go and click on mini Pac-Man code, and you'll see that exact comment I wrote on that the code I just put in there is now right live on there, right? So here you can see touching wall equals false. Here's that reacting to the collision with the wall code. It's all right on the website live now, okay? You also will have all the videos that you can go in and watch, right? Every video of me doing the media player, the versions of the media player, and all that stuff is there. So you're now outfitted with all the extra code maybe that you need. If you want to go beyond that, remember, you can do that as well, right? You can go beyond even just what I've done this week. So if you go to examples, okay, extra content, we did example 1 and example 2 of Mini Pac-Man. Several more here that go well beyond even that. So they're even more advanced. That for those of you who are, I mentioned those students who are behind and maybe have to catch up and have to sort of balance how little or how much they put into their final project. Well, there's also a bunch of you students who have really done well in this course. And a lot of these concepts have been really easy. So you can keep pushing yourself beyond that even if you want, okay? All right, everybody, it is 2:30. At this point, I'm not going to require any of you to stay on Teams in a second. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and have a good weekend. What I am going to do is I'm going to leave the option open that you can stay on Teams if you'd like. Because what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to try in about 15 minutes to take this mini Pac-Man and make it a little more exciting by adding more ghosts, more dots, and more walls. I'm going to do that by kind of jumping the code ahead a little bit. So I'm going to make a new project and kind of copy and paste from this one. This will go on the video for those of you who might want to look at it later, but I'm not going to require you guys to stay on Teams to look at it, okay? So just before I do that, I just want to check the list to see, did I miss anyone? Did I mark someone absent who wasn't absent? I actually can download the full attendance list of who was and wasn't here, but I'm just going to do a quick scan and see that everyone is still on the line. Whether you're listening or not, that's a different story, but that's good. I marked everybody present because everybody eventually showed up for the meeting. There was a couple of people who were already marked absent, but other than that, everyone's present. And before I get started, does anyone have any questions that you can't wait till Monday to ask? All right, so if you don't need me anymore, have a great weekend and we'll see you in class Monday. And if you are interested, stay on Teams for the next little bit as I try to recreate Pac-Man again, but with multiple walls and ghosts. All right, here we go. So I've got Visual Studio running. I got the mini Pac-Man here. Hello? So I got mini Pac-Man running here, and I'm going to try to make bigger Pac-Man. Mini Pac-Man, this is going to be bigger Pac-Man. And, bigger Pac-Man could turn into a different game too, like Frogger or Space Invaders or something like that. But let's just start with this. Okay, so I'm going to go to the design of mini Pac-Man, and I'm going to copy and paste these picture boxes so I don't have to waste a lot of time making them. So first I'll start off with this, change the properties of my form, background color, black, startup position, window state, maximized, and where are we at? Form, border style, none. Okay, I'm going to paste those things. I'm going to add my timer as well, so that I have the timer. I'm going to make sure the timer's turned on. And I'm going to drop its interval down to 1, so it's really fast. And then I'm going to take the form and go to the lightning bolt, go to key down and double click it so that that's ready to go. I'm also going to go to the timer and double click the timer, so that's ready to go. I'm also going to do form load, so that's ready to go. So I've got 3 pieces of code ready to go. This is just like mini Pac-Man. I got Same basic idea. Okay, so I'm going to take the key down code. I'm going to skip the comments, but I'm going to take the key down code and take that over, put it in there. It's going to give me an error because I don't have some of these variables, but I'm going to go back and get the variables now. Not all of them though, not all of them. So I'm going to get all the constants, and I'm going to get Pac-Man direction. I'm going to get that too. Oops. I'm going to put those in bigger Pac-Man. I'm also going to go and get the Pac-Man coordinates. Put those in. But I'm not going to do the wall, the dot, and the ghost, because that's the idea, is I'm going to do multiples of these, right? So for example, I'm going to right now make 4 ghosts. Okay, not 1 ghost, but 4 of them. And I need a bit of a reference here. So I need the traditional Pac-Man game. I need to know the of those ghosts. I'm going to make it somewhat legit here, right? So the images of the Pac-Man ghosts, it looks like they're red, green, pink, and orange. I don't know. Let's go with that. So let's set some of these different colors. All right, so properties, background color, custom. Do we have a pink? I'll go with that. It's kind of pinky. Green, let's get a greenish color. Of course, I'm colorblind, so this is terrible. And an orangey color. Okay. So there's going to be my 4 ghosts. I can move them around later, so they're there. Here's something else I'm going to do that's, I think, a little more interesting. I'm going to add a second timer. This timer is going to be used to control the ghosts. So it automatically runs the ghosts, okay? They're not just maybe standing still. I don't know if I'll get to that one. We'll see if we have time. Okay, so let's go back to Mini Pac-Man. So if we take this, the coordinates for the ghost 1, and I went and put these into this one, and I put in that, okay? If my ghosts are going to move, I would also need a variable to track the movement of the ghosts. So instead of Pac-Man direction, I would say ghost 1 direction, okay? So I would also have a variable to track the movement of the ghost, ghost 1. Then I could do 4 sets of these. But in order to make this a little more realistic to what's going on, I'm actually going to, instead of a 1, put an S there. Okay? And I'm going to show you a concept that comes up in the 40S computer science, or sorry, the 30S computer science course. I'm going to put these 2 square brackets right there. This is what's called an array. Okay? I'm going to do it in all of these. An array is a little more complicated than a regular variable. Okay? But arrays deals with whole groups of things, with one thing. They're not created the same as regular variables. You do it a little bit differently. You do it like this. And you need to know how many. I'm going to say that the number of ghosts is 4. I'm going to place that right there. Okay? I'm going to do that for all of these. This is a little bit fancier. This is what's called an array. Okay? Arrays is not something you've learned this year. It is something that's taught in the Computer Science 30S course. More advanced concept. But why I'm showing it to you, for those of you who want to push yourselves, is this is something that is better to deal with large groups of things. So that's the coordinates for ghost 1. Now, if I think about it, I can reuse that code for not just ghost 1, but I can find and replace ghost with dot, and it'll be dots. And I'll replace them all. Okay. And capital ghosts can be replaced with capital dots. Okay. And I can then set how many dots I'm going to have. Let's say I'm going to have 10 dots. Okay. So I'm going to need maybe 10 of these. Okay. So right now I only have the one. What's going on? Why is my computer frozen? What's going on? Can I move it? Sorry guys, something's going wacky on my computer. Why won't it do what it's supposed to do? I know there's a thing where it can lock it, but I don't think I clicked that, did I? Lock controls, no? Okay, let me just restart things. Something's going a little haywire on my Visual Studio. Okay, how are we on time? 2:39. Oh boy, this is going to be tight. I don't know if we'll be able to do it. Figure Pac-Man. Okay. I don't think I need to open the other one yet. We'll get to it. All right. I'll get it launched at least. This little bug is throwing off my timeline here. If I don't get it completely finished, I can always sort of go over it in class on Monday for those who'd be interested still. All right. So this idea of an array is a much more complex concept, but it's really useful when dealing with lots of stuff, because rather than just keep repeating the same code over and over again, you can use the array to keep track of a whole group of things at once. But it's tricky. It requires you to kind of understand how it works. Okay, okay, finally. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. The 10 dots, okay? For walls, and I'm going to make them different shapes, etc. I'm going to put a couple on the outside here. One. That was weird. Oh, now I need to know how many walls I just made. Pick wall. Pick wall. This one. Picture box 14. Yeah, it didn't name these things properly. That's what I was a little worried about. Okay, picture box 3, 4. Okay. Where's pick ghost 1? Okay. Paste. You copy and paste. Oh, it still didn't name them right. Oh well. Okay, so let me go back. I'm creating a barrier here that it can kind of loop through and go around and stuff like that. So anyways, putting some walls out there. Even have them kind of overlap a little bit. So I can kind of build my own sort of map here of where the dots are and where the ghosts will be and stuff like that, right? I'm trying to make it a little more interesting, reshaping this in kind of my own way. All right. Just want to get enough of this sort of out there. Okay, so now back to the code. So I'm now going to, theoretically, that's what I did with the dots. I don't need a direction variable, though, for dots, because they're not moving around. They're staying in their spot. Now I can do what I did here. Paste and replace dots with walls. So dot will be replaced with wall. Dot, wall, replace them all. Okay, and the number of walls, let me just recount, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There'll be 5 walls. Okay, so that's where I start. I start by, instead of using regular variables, I use these fancier variables for this, these fancier types there. Now, what I can do is in form load, if I go, bigger Pac-Man, which 2 versions of bigger Pac-Man up and running right now. Dots. That one's not doing anything. This is the one. All right. Sorry, guys. How are we on time? Oh, the time is slow. It's quickly disappearing on us. So the thing about the walls and the dots is we need to know where they are, but we don't need to know where they are all the time. So I'm going to put the code for reading where they are in form load. Not for Pac-Man or the ghosts, because they're going to be theoretically moving around. The same way we did this stuff with the dots and the walls, let me just do it, just this piece of code. I'm going to put it in form load of bigger Pac-Man. And it's not dot 1, it's dots top, okay? So that's what I'm going to do it with. But I'm also going to need picture boxes for all these dots, right? And I don't have that yet. I mean, I have them, but this is where the naming part actually is important. There's one of these dots that's named pic dot 1, but I'm going to have to name the rest of them. So this will be pic dot 2. What do you mean it's not valid? Why you got to be like that? That's 4. Pic dot. Is it not remembering these before I go over? It's not. Why are you not? Yeah, you are. 5. Pic dot 6. I don't know what's going on in Visual Studio. It's just 7. 10 of them, right? So shouldn't have made 10. Like 3. You would have got the idea. Okay, let's see if that actually worked. Pic dot 1, 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there's all the pictures for that. Now, while I'm doing this, I'm going to do the ghosts as well. So this is pic ghost 1. And yeah, you could name their actual names as well. 2, 3, 4. And yes, I'm going to do it with the walls. This is pic wall 1. 2, 3, 4. One more. That should now mean, hopefully, that all these picture boxes have names, and they don't. What is this picture box? Where are these supposed picture boxes that I don't see on the design right now? I must have pasted a bunch in weird spots, but I think I've done what I needed to do. Yeah, there they are, pic wall 4, et cetera, et cetera. But now I'm going to do something strange. It's a weird numbering system that is part of arrays. Instead of it being called pic dot 10, I'm going to call it pic dot 0. And I'm going to do the same with the other stuff. I'm going to take the very last one. So instead of pic ghost 4, I'm going to make it pic ghost 0. Right? driving me nuts. I know we only have a minute left. We're never going to get this done. But anyways, here we go. Pick goes 4 becomes pick goes 0. Pick wall. So there's still a pick goes 4. What? This is just not working out. Saving. Okay, we're gonna have to do the I don't know what's going on. Something wacky's going on, guys. So, all right. So I'm just gonna call it. That's all we can do today. I'm gonna stop the recording. I'll